Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue's season came to an end in the final second of the Sweet 16 game on Friday night. A heartbreaking loss for Purdue. We're going to look back at what happened on Friday. We're going to put a wrap on the season that was as Purdue's season comes to an end. And we're going to look ahead to what's next for the Purdue program ahead of, what's going to be a really, really anticipated year next year. There's a ton to get to on today's show. Let's do it. If you don't, follow on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. There's going to be no lack of discussion this offseason. Come join the conversation there and be sure to subscribe. Just because the season's over doesn't mean the podcast is. We'll be here all summer. We'll be here all spring, getting you ready for Purdue football, talking about everything Purdue basketball related. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. Purdue loses 62-60 to Houston on Friday night, maybe Saturday morning, however you want to consider it, inside Lucas Oil Stadium. A game where Purdue gave a really, really incredible effort, if you ask me. Houston is an excellent team. Houston is the type of team that I think Purdue would have liked to avoid at all costs. But in the NCAA tournament, you don't get control. Just in the same way that Purdue might have benefited from getting McNeese instead of Clemson in the second round, Purdue gets Houston with the draw. And look, there were a lot of things about Houston that I thought were going to give Purdue problems, and I thought Purdue would have to play one of its best, if not its best game of the season to win. I don't know that Purdue did that, but Purdue did play well. And if you ask me, the ending was just very fitting for what held Purdue back from really hitting that next level this year. It's a play where Purdue doesn't get a call on a Milos Uzan push-off that, by the book, it's certainly a foul. In practice, that's never going to get called. I'm not going to get on a tangent here. That doesn't make much sense, but just in reality, that's never going to get called. Purdue's unable to secure the rebound. It gets knocked off of Camden Heide, and then Purdue has to really overplay some stuff on the inbound because it has no rim protection. And Houston gets a layup from a really, really well-designed play by Kelvin Sampson. That last 10 seconds of the game was a microcosm of how close Purdue was to really hitting that next level this year, but also exasperated those flaws that Purdue had. Houston had 16 offensive rebounds in the game, leading to 20 second chance points. None of those bigger than the offensive rebound and the 2 second chance points there with 2.8 seconds left. But that was just a heck of a play by Kelvin Sampson. It really was. Purdue has done that defensively on inbounds plays a lot this year. Purdue's trying to create some havoc. It's trying to create some confusion there. It was a great job by Houston to anticipate it. That was a really well-run play. If you're Purdue, so be it. Because I thought as a whole in this game, Purdue was really, really well prepared. Houston's defense did not phase Purdue's offense. Now, that's not to say Purdue's offense didn't have challenges, because it did. It only scored 60 points. It didn't shoot particularly well. It finishes 40% from the field, 29% from three, but Purdue only turns it over 7 times. That was the biggest thing. Houston can really turn you over in bunches, and Purdue never did. Purdue never, maybe there was a stretch at the start of the second half where Purdue turned it over on a couple of possessions in a row. But outside of that, Purdue really handled it really well. Purdue was ready to shoot when it had space. And this is something we talked about. Houston was going to hard hedge Braden Smith. And my goodness, did it hard hedge Braden Smith. It had 2 guys trailing him every time he tried to come off a ball screen. And he moved the ball really, really well. Purdue had to let it fly because Houston has the very unique ability to take away Braden Smith and take away Trey Kaufman-Renn to a degree and make Purdue's secondary and tertiary options beat it. And, frankly, Purdue was ready for that. Fletcher Lawyer gets 7 threes up. Miles Colvin and Camden Heide each get 6 threes up. Braden Smith has 5 threes go up. Some of those were a little more forced, but at times those are the best shots you're going to get. Over half of Purdue's field goal attempts came from 3 because that's what was there for the taking. It wasn't something where this team is ideally suited to take that many threes, but against a defense like Houston, you're not going to be able to get into your bread and butter with Trey Kaufman-Renn over and over. I thought Purdue looked very well prepared. I thought that was, I hate doing the coaching thing because these guys are, infinitely better at what they do than I am. But I thought Purdue looked like it was very well prepared for everything Houston was going to throw at it. And I thought defensively, Purdue did a fine job as well. It's not like Houston had a ton of easy baskets. Purdue's not, the great wall on defense. Purdue has its flaws there, but this was the 3rd straight game in the NCAA tournament where Purdue had very nice attention to detail defensively. Purdue made things difficult for Houston. And, really, you come into this game and you tell me Houston's going to score 62 points and Purdue's only going to turn the ball over 7 times. I tell you, Purdue's in a heck of a spot. I don't know if it'll win, but it's in a heck of a spot, and Purdue was in a heck of a spot in this game. It's all you could have asked for, to be right in that thing in the final minute. All Purdue could have asked for. Braden Smith was immaculate. 15 assists does not happen in college basketball. And I've talked about this so much this year that it's like beating a dead horse, but players in college basketball do not rack up 15 assists. A 5-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio against Houston's defense does not happen. This is just out of this world. He was excellent for Purdue. And again, Houston wasn't going to let him score. Not with the way it was hedging ball screens, not with the attention it put on him. Most teams don't have the defenders to do what Houston did, but that's why Houston's the best defensive team in the country. Braden Smith was calm. He was composed. He was finding guys who were at least open enough to let a shot fly. To assist or score, every second half field goal that Purdue scored, that's something else. That is something else. It was a great end to a really good season for Braden Smith, a truly great season, one where he's a consensus All-American, one that will result in his banner going up in Mackey Arena when his playing career comes to an end. Just awesome from him. And Trey Kaufman-Renn moved the ball well too. This was part of it. So much of what Purdue has wanted to do all season came from Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn in ball screen action, Trey Kaufman-Renn in post-up action. But in this game, Purdue was able to pivot away from it because it wasn't there for the taking. And that's where I kind of come back to Purdue's preparation being really strong. Trey Kaufman-Renn moved the ball. He only had 2 assists, but it felt like he moved the ball much better than that number would indicate. I thought he had a really nice game, even if he maybe missed a couple of shots that he normally wouldn't miss. But Houston did a great job on him. To hold him to 14 points, most players, that's a really good night. But as a consistent 20-plus a night guy, Houston did a great job limiting him. Purdue took what Houston gave it, and man, that was almost enough. Purdue was one play away. It was just one play away from, an all-time performance. It would have been the first time in Purdue's history that it's beaten a 1 seed. That would have been really, really something. It was a fun night. I was able to go to the game at Lucas Oil. It was a fun night. It was a good atmosphere. Lucas Oil Stadium's not a good place to watch basketball by any means, but it's better in that setup than it will be at the Final Four next year when it's the entire court setup or the entire stadium field setup. That's going to be much worse. But, Purdue got off to a good start. Fletcher Loyer got Purdue off to a great start. And someday, folks are going to look back on Fletcher Loyer's career and look at his stats as someone who's going to go well above 1,500 career points next year and going to be around a 40% career three-point shooter at Purdue and be pretty far up on the career three-point list at Purdue and wonder why he got so much hate during his time here. It drives me insane. Fletcher Loyer's a really good player. He leads Purdue in scoring in this game with 16 points. He was really good. He was really, really good. He gets you off to a great start and gets Purdue settled in on offense because outside of him, Purdue had nothing going on offense early on. CJ Cox did some good things. Camden Heide was huge with the shot, a couple of shots late. Obviously, he has the shot with 33 seconds left to tie it. That was really big time from him. He closed the season on a really positive note. Miles Colvin did some all right things. He only goes 1 for 6 from 3, but he hits a couple of dribble pull-ups that he really hasn't done all season. Again, just one play short, and Purdue did miss some opportunities. One that really sticks out. Jakari Harris gets caught between a layup and a dunk and misses it. That's 2 points Purdue doesn't get. That was in the first half, but, that hurts. There's a play at one point where Purdue has some momentum. I think it cut it to 56-50, if I'm remembering right. And, Braden Smith goes for the kill shot alley-oop from 50 feet that sails out of bounds or sails, off of Miles Colvin's hands and into Houston. I don't remember, but that's a couple times now here late in the season where Purdue's tried that and it just hasn't worked. A couple of those, man, that's different. That's a different setup late in the game. Purdue does, for as ready to shoot as Purdue was, Purdue only goes 8 for 27 from 3. That isn't ideal. I would have said you probably need to shoot better than 29% to win this one. Trey Kaufman-Renn missed a couple shots he normally makes, but that's what happens when you're playing against a really good team. This stuff doesn't come easily. And by no means was this a well-officiated game. I know I've heard from a lot of you over the years, that you need to be more fair talking about officiating because I really don't mention it much. And this was not a well-officiated game. It wasn't. And the NCAA has a problem here. This is far from the only game where the officiating has been a big story in the NCAA tournament. I look back at that Arkansas-St. John's game that was just a complete disaster. Look, the Miles Uzan push-off was the one that everyone's going to remember. By rule, that's a push-off. That's an offensive foul. Purdue had a blatant goaltend in the first half that went uncalled. And maybe that was just the basketball gods repaying Purdue from when High Point did that. Braden Smith had a layup that was clearly goaltended on that didn't get called. Same deal. Purdue goaltended on that, and it didn't get called. There were a few balls knocked out of bounds that felt questionable. Now, I was in Section 222. I wasn't exactly close to some of these, and I wasn't all that close to the video board either. But it felt like there were some ones that could have been reviewed that weren't because you can't review those. So be it. That's part of it, but that was significant. There were a few on rebounds maybe that there were some fouls. Trey Kaufman-Renn had a questionable one go against him in the second half, but he also had one that was called a charge in the first half that was questionable. It's not an ideal situation where there's so much of this after a Sweet 16 game. I don't know what the solution is to improve upon it, but it's a suboptimal spot to be in. All in all here, we're 15 minutes in. If you're a Purdue fan, I think this was an effort to be really proud of. When Houston got up 10 in the second half, it felt like this one might be over. It felt like Purdue might be done. And it wasn't. Purdue just kept fighting. Purdue never backed down. It never stopped competing. It hit some big shots down the stretch. Purdue handled the offense-defense stuff really well. Purdue did a lot of great things in this game. And to come up just short, if you had said this in late February when Purdue was really kind of swooning, that Purdue would be in a tie game with 30 seconds to go against a 1 seed in the Sweet 16 in Indianapolis, everyone and their mother would have said, sign me up. And it didn't happen, but that was an effort to be proud of. I thought Purdue played really, really well. Purdue did everything you could have asked for to give itself a chance. The season comes to an end with Purdue finishing 24-12. It was tied for 4th in the Big Ten. An interesting year, a real roller coaster ride of a season. In November, it felt like Purdue could be pretty good. It beats Alabama. It wins the MTE out in San Diego, beating Ole Miss. And you thought, man, this team's going to be pretty good. And then in December, you lose to Penn State, you lose to Auburn, you lose to Texas A&M, and you think, man, I don't know where this is going. And then January goes really well, and then February doesn't go really well, and then you get a couple nice wins, and then you don't impress in the Big Ten tournament. But you finish strong in the NCAA tournament with 2 really good performances in Providence and a really nice performance in the Sweet 16 against a great Houston team. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. It always is. And I know there will be some people that look at this as a really good year. There will be some people that look at this as a really disappointing year. And the vast majority in the middle will look at this as what it was in my mind. A pretty good year, a year that if this is your quote-unquote down year, you've really built something special in your program, one where you got some answers, one where you got some answers on things that you needed to get answers on to make next year your year. This wasn't some failure by any means, if you ask me. Finishing top 4 in the Big Ten, tied for 4th, getting to the Sweet 16, that's a good year. It almost always is. I had no idea what to expect coming into the year, but you do the bell curve thing of likely outcomes. This feels like it was in the middle, maybe skewed just to the higher end of the middle. I don't know that it was some smashing success. Purdue's won a lot of Big Ten titles recently to where anything short of that does at times feel like a bit of a disappointment. But, man, I don't know. Matching Michigan State at 17-3 was going to be a really, really big ask. So I don't know that you were ever going to win the Big Ten title in hindsight. The combination of Daniel Jacobson getting hurt and Will Berg not being particularly playable was just too much for this team to overcome to be a real contender. You had no rim protections. You already had rebounding questions coming into the season that further got exasperated when Jacobson got hurt and it became very clear that Purdue wasn't going to win with Will Berg getting extended minutes. That turned out to be a fatal flaw, and you saw it on that final possession. But it is what it is. You live and you learn. Purdue had some ups. It had some downs. Ultimately, it's not that far away from being in an awesome spot. You think about it in hindsight, man, if you can pull out that game at Michigan, if you can pull out that game at Illinois, those two were there for the taking. And if you can pull out this game against Houston, you're in the Elite Eight. You have a couple of more really big-time road wins, and it feels a lot brighter. And Purdue wasn't that far off from it. So, I don't know. If Purdue had beaten Houston, I think it would have had a chance against Tennessee. For transparency, I'm recording this 3 hours before Tennessee-Houston tips off, so I don't know how that game went, but it was a pretty fitting end to the season for Purdue. I think the Sweet 16, being a top 16 team in the country, was about right. And, now the focus turns to next year, which we'll get to after the break here. This episode is brought to you by me. Yes, me. When I'm not watching sports, or more accurately talking about them, I'm talking insurance with the people of Indiana. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, I want to help you protect what you've worked hard to achieve. From home and auto to life and business insurance, I'm here to help you. Give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me at jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com. Let's protect you from life's everyday risks. So, Purdue moves on to next year. It bids farewell to Caleb First as the only senior moving on from this team. He does leave as the all-time winningest player in Purdue program history. There is something to be said for that. He had a nice finish to his career. He never put together the type of career that maybe one would expect from a Mr. Basketball winner. I think a lot of that has to do with what Zach Edey did at Purdue, putting Caleb First in a pretty difficult spot for a couple of years where he wasn't able to get a lot of minutes. But he finished his career strong. He defended really well for this year's Purdue team. He gave great energy. He gave great effort. And while he had his shortcomings, he never was able to become an impact scorer for Purdue. He did some very nice things. He certainly, there's a void to fill there. He was a flawed player, but he was a very big positive for Purdue. He's off to medical school. He's off to be a very, very productive member of our society. Just a really good guy, really good kid, a really good representative of Purdue. There's a bright future there. That's something Purdue will be looking for in the transfer portal. It goes without saying that next year is your year to do things. You have Braden Smith, you have Fletcher Lawyer, you have Trey Kaufman-Wren as seniors, you have Miles Colvin, you have Camden Heide as juniors, you have Daniel Jacobson as a redshirt freshman. You'll have those two freshman guards back after getting some experience. Obviously anything can happen here, right? The portal is open. We've seen Brian Waddell hop in the portal already. No surprise there. That injury back in the fall of 2021 just really threw him off. I don't know that he was ever fully able to recover from that, fully able to get to the point where he wanted to be, where he could have gotten. As a player, sometimes it happens. It's a bummer. It's a real bummer, but sometimes it happens. So Purdue will be looking to add in the portal. We'll see if it loses anyone else. Again, I don't like to speculate. Will Berg's going to have a decision to make here. I do not think there's a crystal clear path for playing time for him at Purdue. If he wants to be a part of it, you welcome him with open arms. If he doesn't, great. You can live. And in terms of anyone beyond that, Purdue wants to keep everyone else. There's no doubt. Look, Purdue needs size from the portal. Purdue needs size that it can play for real minutes. It hit me during the Houston game. I think Matt Painter did a really, really good job this year navigating foul trouble with Trey Kaufman-Wren, finding ways to get Trey Kaufman-Wren extra rest during games, because really, he had to play as close to all 40 minutes as he could. He played 36 minutes on Friday, and a couple of those sit-out minutes were after he picked up his fourth foul, and Purdue had to calm him down a little bit because he was hot. You don't want to have to do that. You want to be able to do that if you need to, if you can, play Trey Kaufman-Renn that much because he's a really, really good player. But that was Purdue's only hope this year, was to play him that much. You don't want to be that reliant on him. You don't want to have to be offense-defensing it every 30 seconds because you have guys who give you a really good shot on offense that don't give you a good shot on defense and vice versa, especially in the front court. That's where Purdue was. So Purdue's going to be looking for front court size. You get Daniel Jacobson off of a red shirt. We will see where Raleigh Burgess is as far as injuries and readiness go, but I don't think you can just rely on those two, Camden Heide and Trey Kaufman-Renn, as your front court options. That doesn't seem like a really safe way to go into next season when there is immense upside to your team for next year. That's going to be big for Purdue. Purdue has to be a better rebounding team. It has to have some semblance of rim production. You can't go into next year looking to compete for a championship being 52nd in defensive efficiency. That just doesn't work. You've got to be much better. You've got to be much more well-rounded defensively. Purdue was great on offense, and it did so with really just one player in the front court who was capable of being an impact scorer, that being Trey Kaufman-Renn. No one else in that front court was really capable of being an impact scorer. Purdue will want to change that next year. Now, my fascination is going to be the type of guy Purdue can get out of the portal. Can Purdue get someone who's really, really impactful? It's a big question to me because these guys want to play too. You know, there's been a report from On3 that Oscar Clough, a big guy from South Dakota State, is visiting, doing so here today on Sunday. On3 has him ranked as the number one transfer guy in the country. Is that someone Purdue is capable of landing? Because if Oscar Clough comes to Purdue, he's Purdue's number 2 option in the post, and he's Purdue's number 3 option on offense. Is that what someone with that type of resume, that type of demand wants to settle for? I don't know. Granted, it didn't feel like Lance Jones was the most impactful transfer when he committed. And look at what he turned out to be. He was a godsend for Purdue. Is Purdue capable of getting one of the quote-unquote top centers in the portal? I don't know. It goes without saying, money is a huge part of this. And Purdue seems to feel good about where it's at from that point. Revenue sharing begins in July, but you have your collective until then that can write checks easily until the House settlement officially begins. And at that point, again, I don't see NIL going away. I don't have any confidence in this clearinghouse to enforce fair market value. I don't know what fair market value is for these guys. College sports is a big, big business, man. It is a big business. So what Purdue's able to do in the portal, I'm curious to see. And unless Purdue has someone leave from the backcourt, I don't know that there's much room to add there. It's a crowded spot, especially when you consider the volume that Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer will be getting, the amount of minutes those guys will be getting. I don't know that you want to have to play Braden Smith all 40 every game next year. He didn't check out of the NCAA tournament once, but it'd be nice to play him 35 instead. You're not going below that. Fletcher Lawyer's too good. You're playing him 30 minutes a night. So, you have those two guards that are freshmen, CJ Cox, Jakari Harris. They'll be sophomores with an offseason of physical development, getting more comfortable. You have Miles Colvin. He closed the season strong. We'll talk a little bit more about looking at some of these guys probably on next week's show, but, he did not have the season you were probably hoping for. Shoots 37, 31, and 66 from the field. That's not great. But if he's your fourth or fifth guy, that's pretty good. He's played a lot of basketball for you. You have Jack Benter coming off a red shirt. You have Antoine West coming in. There's a lot going on there. I see Purdue's biggest need at that 4 spot, at that 5 spot. We'll see what Purdue ends up doing there, because next year is your year to make some noise. It reminds me a lot of last season when Purdue had Zach Edey as a senior. Purdue had Mason Gillis and Ethan Morton as seniors. Your freshman guards were now sophomore guards. You had Lance Jones coming in. Purdue had the pieces to be a really, really good team. And Purdue was a really, really good team that, just got a tough matchup in the NCAA tournament. Next year, Purdue is going to have that type of continuous roster, that type of experienced roster, and we're going to operate under the assumption that no key pieces hit the portal. Maybe it'll happen, I don't know. But this really looks like your year. Because remember, with the transfer portal, the COVID year is no more. So I don't know what it'll look like. But the number of high-level players available in the portal from last year to this year is going to go down. And that's going to create a trickle-down effect. The high majors are going to be trying to eat everything they can and load up as much as possible because there won't be as much. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. Teams are going to take a veteran-approached focus. I don't think that's going to leave, but you might not be seeing the 24-year-olds anymore. It might be a little bit more of your traditional juniors, traditional seniors, compared to guys in their 5th and 6th year of college basketball. And that's a big difference. Purdue's going to come in with 2 preseason All-Americans, someone who is a sniper of a three-point shooter, going to finish over 1,500 career points, and you have some encouraging depth in the backcourt. Maybe a little depth in the front court, certainly in the backcourt, and you have a couple of really interesting pieces in the front court. What can round things out? What can you add to this roster to round things out? Because you start to think forward, this is a legitimate preseason top 5, top 10. You had a big forward. I mean, I've heard crazier things than thinking that this could be a preseason number 1 team. And there's something quite dramatic about how this season ends. Purdue loses a heartbreaker at Lucas Oil Stadium, but you're set to return a ton. You're bringing your 3 in-state seniors back who have been leaders on this team. Fletcher Lawyer gets a little in-state asterisk, I guess, but you're bringing your core back for the Final Four in your home state when they're seniors. That's kind of Disney movie type of stuff, and we'll see what Purdue can do, but it's kind of on a tee for Purdue to have a really cool story next year. And sometimes sports really honor those things that are going to be really cool stories. I had 2 questions from a good longtime listener asking about the collective and resources that can be utilized to not only attract but retain the talent that Purdue needs to. I can't speak to exact dollar figures here. I cannot. Purdue seems to be in a fine spot, just by all accounts. I don't know that Purdue is a nation's leader in NIL spending or in NIL assets. I don't think that's the case at all. You don't really know what figures are real and what figures aren't, but there's a lot of money going around. Next season, starting in July, the house settlement comes into play. And Purdue is committed to sharing all of the $20.5 million that the athletic department is allowed to under the house settlement. What share of that goes to basketball? I don't know, but just based off of what we've seen from other athletic departments similar to Purdue, maybe $5 million, maybe $4 million in that range will go to basketball. Your majority of it will go to football. Maybe Purdue throws a few coins at women's basketball and volleyball as well. But the large bulk of it is going to go to football and to men's basketball. From NIL, I don't know what Purdue has to work with there. That is a pretty tightly sealed lip on that. I think Purdue's probably competitive. I think Purdue is probably competitive enough, but, I don't know that Purdue is some worldwide leader in NIL. But this is the ultimate test, right? You have two guys that would be in massive, massive demand, that would be maybe the two best players to ever enter the transfer portal, probably being up there with Hunter Dickinson, as All-Americans going into the portal. I don't see why Purdue can't make it work, because as I've said, this isn't like this came out of nowhere. These guys didn't come out of nowhere. Purdue's known for a while that these guys are two really good players that they're going to have to fight to keep. Purdue should be prepared for this. And then he asks, a best case scenario of portal prospects, style, type of player that best fits the team needs. I think Purdue needs an athletic 5-man, or at least an athletic enough 5-man. With the way Trey Kaufman-Renn plays, I don't know that you want a statue next to him. I don't know that works. I think you want someone who can catch some lobs, who can move around a bit, who can be good in the pick and roll game. Maybe someone who can knock down a 3 off of a pick and pop to help spread the floor. Things like that. I don't know that you need a statue, an A.J. Hammons type anchor, an Isaac Haas type anchor down there. I think you want someone who can move around a bit. Defensive versatility is always welcomed because Trey Kaufman-Renn is a little limited on defense. You want someone who can protect the rim. You want someone who can block shots. Trey Kaufman-Renn led Purdue in block shots this year with 11. Purdue had none of it to speak of. You've got to change that next year. There's got to be something there to prevent teams from just trying to cut to the basket on you all year. So that 4-5 type who can block some shots, who can move around a bit, that's where I think your ideal guy comes. Guys, I just wanted to say thank you to those of you who listened throughout the season. This was our 5th season of the podcast here. 5th season for Purdue football, Purdue basketball, and we've come to an end. We're now into the off season. So for those of you who stuck around all year, thank you. To those of you who have been around for all 5 years, thank you for being loyal listeners. It means a lot. I greatly appreciate it. It's always a fun time here interacting with you all. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. We got a lot to talk about here this offseason, and what I need content ideas. We'll do some decent stuff here. We'll have some fun guests on, I think, but we need ideas. Send them to me. Send them to me on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Email them to me, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss a thing. And keep an eye on our bracket challenge. That's getting down to the wire here. We got a lot of people in the mix. That's been fun. We'll have an episode with the winner of that. So, guys, thank you again. I appreciate you all. Have a great time watching the Elite Eight. You probably will listen to this before then. We'll be back next week talking about where Purdue goes from here, talking about year in review a little bit. Until then, guys, take care.